Welcome. So I did a video and somebody commented and said God doesn't belong to a party or something of that nature. So if you're watching this video, this isn't like a dig at you, because I get that comment a lot. And I know that I already responded to you, but I'm just going to say it again. God doesn't belong to a party, but neither does Satan. Yet you can see his agenda being pushed actively through one party. And I think a lot of times we don't see or understand that God and Satan both get expression in the earth through people. So you're expressing one kingdom or the other. And we have been called to expand God's kingdom in the earth. This idea that we're working to get to heaven is false. Jesus said, this is how I want you to pray. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It has always been the Father's desire that the kingdom of heaven be manifested in the earth. And it's manifested through his people. So we can't detach that at all when it comes to even our government, because they are the ones that make the laws of the land. So we have to go back and we have to look at policy. So let's detach the names altogether and let's just look at what it is that they represent. And when I say look at what they represent, I mean currently, because I could go through the history of things and we can say this and that and the other, but if I'm looking at the parties today and I'm looking at their movement, it tells a story if you're actually paying attention to it. So as I go through it, please, instead of being offended because you may be a believer that votes Democrat, really stop and just assess what it is that you're doing instead of getting butthurt over it. And I think that there's a difference, because when I talk about the Democrat Party, I'm not talking about the Democrat voters, not all of them. You know, it's kind of like when you talk about the CCP. I'm not talking about the Chinese people, but the government. There's a difference between the people and the government. And there is a difference between saying, you know, well, I vote Democrats. Or are you saying I'm this way? No, I'm not saying that at all. But as far as the leaders that are crafting up the legislation and making moves on the behalf of the American people, yeah, all their agenda, definitely from the pit of hell. So let's just go through it. One side is actively pushing to destroy our sovereignty. They make it more of an issue of color and race and not wanting to accept all the people in the world when it has nothing to do with that. They hate sovereignty so much that they want to destroy ICE.
The president again today seizing on a call from some liberals to abolish Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. He's blasting Democrats on Twitter, saying, when we have an infestation of MS-13 gangs in certain parts of our country, who do we send to get them out? ICE. It's the third straight day he's injected himself squarely in the middle of a debate brewing inside the Democratic Party, with some in the party's left wing calling for the elimination of ICE, while others are warning of the political consequences of doing so. The president taking a broad stroke, saying, many Democrats are deeply concerned about the fact that their leadership wants to denounce and abandon the great men and women of ICE, thereby declaring war on law and order. Senator Elizabeth Warren is among the Democrats leading the charge.
The president's deeply immoral actions have made it obvious we need to rebuild our immigration system from top to bottom, starting by replacing ICE with something that reflects our morality and...
They don't like that, so they want to destroy that. Not only do they want to destroy the law enforcement at the border, they also want to destroy the law enforcement in our local areas with the whole defunding the police movement.
Not only do we need to disinvest in police, but we need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
Los Angeles and New York officials have promised to cut their police budget, and the city council in Minneapolis, where Floyd died, has vowed to disband their police department.
Defunding the police.
Yes, I support the defund movement.
For them to run out and claim that it's Republicans who want to defund the police, that's like Democrats saying they're the ones that want to build the wall.
You don't find Republicans looking to defund the police. That is only a Democrat talking point. When it comes to racial issues, Democrats can't keep race out of their mouth. They make everything a black and white issue. They make policies based on equity that are absolutely destructive.
But, you know, Congressman, you know this. You and I have talked about this. New York's Democrat passed bail reform in 2020, wiped out bail for dozens of offenses. Let's show it. Second-degree manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, child sex crimes, and more. So they wipe out bail for that, but they want high bail for that guy in self-defense. Biden's border collapse is hitting U.S. cities right as they are weakening crime laws, right as they are letting people out. I mean, New York's no bail law, again, approved by state Democrats in 2019. Congressman, it helped free from jail last week 2 Mexican drug smugglers caught with more than 140 pounds of crystal meth worth a street value of about $1.2 million. They were set free with no bail.
The no cash bail, to where they're letting criminals back on the street within 24 hours in the name of equity. That does not come out of the kingdom of God. There is no justice there. And the people that suffer are the people in the communities that have to live around these people. There's no consequences for their behavior, and they know it. They go in, get locked up, go back out again. But you will find no Republicans that are on board with this. They are not on board with being soft on crime. When it comes to the LGBTQ issues, there is only one group that is actively pushing to trans the kids.
Dr. Levine, you have supported both allowing minors to be given hormone blockers to prevent them from going through puberty, as well as surgical destruction of a minor's genitalia. Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office and coming to your office and discussing the particulars of the standards of care for transgender medicine.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question. Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia? You have said that you're willing to accelerate the protocols for street kids. I'm alarmed that poor kids with no parents who are homeless and distraught, you would just go through this and allow that to happen to a minor. Will you make a more firm decision on whether or not minors should be involved in these decisions?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field, and if confirmed to the position of Assistant Secretary of Health, I would certainly be pleased to come to your office and talk with you and your staff about the standards of care and the complexity of this field. We really want to base our treatment and to affirm and to support and empower these youth, not to limit their participation in activities and sports, and even limit their ability to get gender affirmation treatment in their state.
Last month, Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton issued a legal opinion that said gender-affirming procedures and treatments, when performed on children, can legally constitute child abuse. Texas Children's Hospital, the country's largest pediatric facility, paused all gender-affirming therapy for children. Republican State Senator Charles Perry agrees with the directive's intent.
I'm faced with the welfare of a child that, and I think the data supports it, that is not mature enough to have these decisions being made for them to understand.
And any time a Republican has anything to say about these issues, they always want to tie it to Christian, white supremacy, bigotry. They do it all the time. Now, moving on to another issue, looking at abortion. One party wants to reel it in, while the other one is screaming for you to be able to abort your child on the day of birth.
Where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth. She has physical signs that she is about to give a birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking
point.
if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
Republicans are not with that. Moving on to another thing. They are actively trying to destroy sex and gender. They want to say that it's a spectrum. It's only one party that is pushing this. Only one. So much so that they came up with a policy for the House that you could not mention mother, father, brother, sister, none of it. Can we roll film?
Of women. And this recent rule change that the House just actually voted and passed on today that you were talking about, removing references to, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters from congressional rules and administration, it's mind-blowing. Because
that is only coming from one side. So for you to tell me that God doesn't belong to a party, but yet you feel like you're obligated to one, doesn't really make sense to me. Because if you're voting kingdom, there's no way that you could vote with a party that is actively in opposition to the kingdom that you claim to represent. And I think that saying God doesn't belong to a party is a lazy argument. I was going to say something, but then I forgot. But then I remembered. So I just want to add this in here. It is lazy and irresponsible to vote in wicked leaders because of your blind loyalty to a particular party. It's unacceptable. Back to the video. We're not saying the party. We're looking at the agenda and the moves that are being made, the laws that are being crafted, that'll be governed in the land, doesn't expand the kingdom of heaven. All I see is darkness when I look at everything that they do. And there's only one party that is actively fighting against it. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, the woman that was speaking in the video, Tulsi Gabbard, she was a Democrat. Not anymore. Anytime that one of the Democrats stand up against the agenda, they are immediately ousted when it comes to the party. They ain't got no room for you. No space for you. You not on board with what we're doing, you can leave. So much so that there was a Democrat in Tennessee that has been representing the people there, been elected 13 times. He gave a phenomenal speech, and then after that speech, they said, you know what? For the 2020 election, take him off the ballot. Can we play what this man had to say?
Rise not to go against or support this legislation. I rise because I continue to hear references to what I saw in growing up in this country and growing up in the state of Tennessee as I walked with my father and worked with my father here in the state of Tennessee, in Memphis, Tennessee, and across this state and across this country, in the middle of what has been referenced to on several occasions, the civil rights movement. And, you know, people continue to refer to this, but I saw it. I saw men and women stand with courage and integrity and class, and they changed the world. They changed the world because what the world could see in them was the lie that was being told about them. I am one of those individuals who walked in back doors because the law said I had to. I'm one of those individuals who rode on the back of the bus, on the back seats that were not cushioned because the law said I had to. All of these things we continue to refer to are the things that me and my generation lived. We saw it for ourselves. We're not reading it in the history books, but we lived it. I went with my father when he and our neighbor got one of those I am a man signs and went downtown Memphis and watched him stand there proudly with Dr. King and other men and women, black and white, who had enough courage to stand up against what was wrong. And the way they did it, they had on their suits, their shirts, their ties, their hats, and if it was cold, their overcoats. They locked arms and they marched peacefully, and Dr. King stood for that which was peaceful. Because the world took a look at what was happening in Memphis, in Chicago, in Detroit, in Washington, D.C., and all over this country, we changed the entire world. And we changed it because those men and women had enough guts, integrity, enough citizenship and love of country, because my father was a Korean War era soldier, as many of those other men and women were. They didn't beg for anything. They didn't beg for citizenship. They demanded it because they were American citizens who paid taxes, who raised children, who paid house notes and rent, and did everything they were supposed to do so that they could demand from this country and its Constitution those things that they were supposed to have. How did they do it? They did it by standing like men and women of integrity and class and common sense and values. When the riots started and folks started burning stuff down, that's when my father took my arm and we left. We left because that was not what we were there for. That was not what Dr. King was there for. That was not what others who are famous in the civil rights days were there for. This was not peaceful. It was not part of our movement, and it only hurt everything. Whenever we use the opportunity to do wrong, that policeman that put his foot on that man's neck was wrong, and every one of us in this room decry it. Every one of us in this room condemn it. We say it was wrong. And in America, we have a system of justice, that's going to bring the full impact of the law down upon him. And I think every one of us in this room will support that. And we know that man lay there in a pool of blood. This man didn't die surrounded by his children and his wife. He died in a pool of blood from a coward's bullet, and he died on that day. And I remember as we went back to Memphis and all of the riots broke loose, everything he stood for was all of a sudden being torn down, until calmer voices came and said, Dr. King was against this. He was against this. My family raised money and sent my dad to Washington for that march, where that man stood there and said that he wanted his children judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And all we do in America right now is talk about color. Every issue is about race, it's about color. Instead of us sitting down at the table like men and women of common sense and common justice, and understanding that our enemies are looking with a greedy vigilance upon us as we tear ourselves apart eternally. They have been watching us for 50 years, preparing step by step by step by step for us to kill ourselves. And I may not be back here next year. And I'm sure everything I say is going to be misconstrued and misquoted and used against me in November. Fine, because I stand for my father's legacy. I stand for the men and women who acted like they had some sense and some courage and changed this country by being men and women who stood for something. If we don't start standing for something, don't you know that the people who are looking at what's happening in Washington, in Detroit, in Portland, and Seattle, they're getting emboldened because we act like a bunch of punks, too frightened to stand up and protect our own stuff. You tell me that somebody got the right to tear down property that Tennessee taxpayers paid for, that American taxpayers paid for, and somebody has the right to destroy it, deface it, and tear it down? What kind of people have we become that we can't protect our own stuff? And when the heroes are those who violate the law, our police chief in Memphis, Tennessee, when they shut the bridge down between Memphis and Arkansas, our police chief walked up there because it was a peaceful protest, even though they had shut down that bridge. He walked up there, he talked to the protesters, he let them know that they had a right to protest, and after a while he walked them all off the bridge. Because they conducted themselves properly, he conducted himself properly, and there was no one harmed on that evening. Peaceful protest ends peacefully. Anarchy ends in chaos. And what we see happening right now, any of us with any common sense whatsoever, know that what we see is not peaceful. So we can continue to fool ourselves and mix with words and use rhetoric and public relations in order to frost this stuff over and put a nice picture on what we see that is frightening. Frightening? I have a nephew who is a policeman who talked about getting attacked the other night. You're telling me that somebody has the right to throw feces and urine in the face of those that we as taxpayers pay to protect us, and that's okay? What has happened to us? If we don't get this right now, I've got grandchildren. I don't want to see the country we're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. If we don't start acting like we got some guts, right now, brethren, sisterin, friends, colleagues, right now.
Did he say anything unreasonable? Not at all, but it goes against the agenda. And if you go against the agenda, we got to get rid of you. You find that left and right, which tells me that there is no space for you to think opposite than what it is that we're pushing. And what it is that they're pushing, again, comes out of the kingdom of darkness. So for you to look me in the face and tell me that God doesn't belong to a party, but you are actively going to vote for people that are against the God that you claim to serve, that is against the kingdom that you claim to be a part of, I don't get it. No, I'm sorry. And I'm not saying that Republicans have it all together. I've said this repeatedly. I am against establishment Republicans. Like, I do not care at all for Mitch McConnell. There's a slew of them that I think absolutely need to go. So it's not about just saying, well, all Republicans got it together. That's not the case either. But they are not actively trying to promote an antichrist agenda. So in closing, if you can look at everything that I just listed and go through their platform and what it is that they represent, if you can go through that and say, you know what, I think God's not a part of it and he don't really care if I side with this side, then I would just suggest for you to read your Bible again. But I'm going to leave it there. This isn't a kick at anybody, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think that we need to stop and reassess ourselves instead of being offended by it, because you being offended and angry and then just walking away from it and just ignoring it doesn't deal with the issue, because it's still there. So address it. And if you still find yourself at the same place, then, you know, more power to you. But I'm going to leave it there. I know that you've been blessed in your hearing. It is always family. Remember, today is the day of salvation, the year of the Lord's favor. Bride of Christ, arise.